Hey, welcome back, friends. Today is subframe assembly day for Project Mockingbird. Need to get that all put together, suspension, steering all on there, get the engine assembled and transmission put on that thing. Then we'll finish prepping the firewall and paint that, flip it down, hook it all together. Easy as that, right? Well, don't let it get overwhelming. We're going to start with just getting the subframe assembled, all the things you might want to know or don't want to know, or like I say, the right way, the wrong way, and of course the BBG way. And some things that might save you some headaches. You're gonna be so happy you're gonna send me a thank you card or give me the like button and send me a little cash too. But there's a couple little things I'm gonna show you along the way. But for the most part, I have sandblasted all the original pieces, new control arm bushings, new ball joints, got tie rod ends. It's gonna redo all the suspension, new brake lines, new fuel lines. And it's kind of like, where does this stuff go? And maybe what order? Maybe you have a question. So that's what we're gonna get into here today, putting the subframe together for Project Mockingbird. And to see what we have here, subframe was sandblasted, painted. That's just an epoxy primer with a 60% gloss black like I painted at the bottom of the car. I've got a new fuel line, new brake line that goes crossover. That's step number one. I'm going to say that about 5 times or more on this video. Step number one, before you put anything in there, put your crossover brake line and fuel line in here first. Now, if you're doing a Camaro, you will not have that fuel line. That's a Firebird only thing. Then the next thing would be, of course, the sway bar. If I put the control arms on, a whole lot easier. So trust me when I say that. So that's anything you get from the video. Remember that. These are the original control arms, new ball joints, control arm bushing, same thing, sandblasted and painted. Brand new springs, you're gonna put those in there. New steering, linkage, etc. Disc brake conversion, put that back on, power steering, gearbox. So that's what we're kind of gonna get into here today. Really isn't a super complicated thing, but like I said, a few things you might wanna go before you get going on yours. So we're going to start with here, what we just talked about, those lines right there. And what those consist of, like I said, this is the fuel line that crosses over from here, lays in here, all the way underneath these engine mounts and pops up right here. Now the brake line goes all the way through these engine mounts and pops up here about where the master cylinder, that proportioning valve goes. Now what I've done, this side you can leave completely assembled, but this side I took the bottom half of the engine mount off. That makes it where you can actually get those lines in there. And that's what I'm talking about. If you had the engine, transmission, exhaust on there, good luck putting this brake line without butchering it. Right now is the perfect time to lay that in there. Then we have the appropriate clips. These actually stack the fuel line and the brake line by the time it's all together. You can see how they both fit in there. You'll need 2 of those and just one of these here. It's like a 3/8, I think what it was. And it goes up right here by the time you put the brake line on and in place with that spring shield on. It makes it a little bit fatter. So we'll get those things routed first. Now, so the first thing I'm going to route this brake line through, I put some tape on the ends to help keep any dirt or sand or anything that might be in here out. There's a chance that there may be some stuff left in the frame, but loop that thing through. And this is kind of flips like so into place. And the fuel line, even easier with that mount out of the way, you literally just kind of lay it in place for now, and that'll get you going. Now these little clips, they go around the fuel line and the brake line. Like so. Just put a bolt in there to keep us happy for a bit. Now don't tighten anything up until you get everything routed where you like it, but you get the idea. Now these I got new from Inline Tube. You can actually clean up the originals if they were in good shape, which I have done in the past, but these ones are pretty crusty on this car, so I opted to buy some new ones. The sad part is they're a little spendy. Okay, and then last but not least, this one goes up here. And that would basically just reinstall this engine mount. Now the problem with this engine mount is, I shouldn't say problem, the thing to keep in mind is this bolt goes through here and through the frame that holds the control arm. So you'll need to get one of your control arm bolts, kind of like an alignment pin, and you put this back together when you snug it up. That way when you go to put your control arms in, you're not mad at yourself chasing your tail, you're trying to take that back loose and get it positioned. So first now, get these put in and snug all those up. Now looking at it all said and done, line is routed, secured there, and there. There's other holes in the frame, but these one seems to line up. Now there's think 6-cylinder or whatever, but I just know this seems to work pretty good for me, and the lines work. Now I'll probably do the same thing. I'll probably put some tape over the end of the fuel lines to keep anything from falling in there. And I have the original spring clamps that go on those hoses, so I'll probably just kind of hang them on there. That way I can kind of keep tabs on those and just, like I said, wrap that with tape. So the next thing we're going to stab in here is that sway bar. Now, to the front of the subframe here, this is our sway bar. Pretty self-explanatory for the most part. And the reason we go ahead and do this next is how this mounts onto the car. Upper control arm would be here. Our lower control arm would be there and there. And then this little mounting pad right here, that is where the sway bar would be mounted up. Now, if you've got the control arm joint in the car, it's kind of hard to wrestle this in there, especially if you upgrade to a larger diameter one. I don't know, if you've got this thing torn apart, now is the time to just make your life a whole lot easier. We just got to fish it through just through this little loop here and come over top of just that little cross member, and that's it. So less chance of scratching things up, dinging things up, and a whole lot easier to wrestle in there. Now they also have these little rubbers that go back on here, little stoppers to keep the sway bar from walking side to side. Again, these are the originals, repainted with that chrome paint that I like to use. It looks like the zinc plating. Bolt it up into place. Now, the other problem I've run into is these rubber bushings. I never trash the old ones because the replacement ones are way too big for the diameter of the sway bar. Like the sway bar is just too small. So at this point, I've always just reused the old ones. Eventually, maybe I'll find a manufacturer makes a good replacement, but in the meantime, I just slap them back together with that, shove these 2 bolts in. And 2. And get a couple turns on it just so it stays in place. And do the same thing to the other side. Now that's all mounted into place. The thing I wanted to share with you, obviously, is the spacing of the sway bar. Look at the gap between the frame and the sway bar. Should be equal on both sides. You're very close to it. And once that's satisfactory, then you go ahead and snug up these bolts here that keep that rubber and keeps that sway bar from shifting side to side. All right, next on the list would be slap the upper and lower control arms. Nothing really out of the ordinary there. Line them up, put your bolts through. The only thing I'm going to say is these bolts here on the end, I have not tightened up. As you can tell, this actually spins relatively easily. This bolt actually holds that rubber, and the ones that go through here in the rear of the control arm, when they go through the frame, do not torque any of those until the car basically has the weight of the engine all on it and everything. So I'll actually leave those loose, and one of the parts of my final assembly is go through and snug up all the suspension bolts, because you really don't want to torque those down prior to, because it starts to twist or pre-twist the bushings. They won't last as long, ride problems, noises, whatever. These are studs. They hammer into the subframe, kind of like a wheel stud on your basically front brake rotors. Those are the originals. I just cleaned them up, reinstalled them, but I had knocked them out initially. But they hammer in nice and snug back through the backside here. So make sure those are in good shape before you put it together. If not, you can buy them new, relatively inexpensive. So we'll go ahead and wrestle some control arms on next. All right, ready to install this bad guy here. Now in 69, the bump stop here on the frame and the control arm are on the front. I believe 69 or 68 is back here. That's how you can tell the difference between a 67, 68, 69 control arms. The holes for the bump stop. 68 be back here, 69 is up here, and 67, I don't really know. I don't think it has any holes at all, but nonetheless, we'll get this thing pushed up into place. The idea here is not to scratch this thing up, try to keep it looking nice, but it's always a bit of a pickle to get these things wrestled in there. There's just the 2 pockets. Typically, I'll start with the rear and hopefully bump the front into place. Of course, I'll put the weight of the engine on the subframe here. Ooh, it just makes it more wiggly. But it's going there. Just keep working into place, bumping it, and eventually you can get the bolt holes lined up and put your bolts through. Let me show you what I'm actually working against here. I'm trying to get these things to push up into place. It's just really snug fit up in these channels, but I need to get that hole lined up to there, and the same thing up there in the front part of it. Couldn't find a rubber mallet, so I'm going to have to actually tap on it here on the edge of my regular hammer. Just May have to do some touch-up work, but that's a pretty easy place to touch up the paint. So I'll work on getting that put up into place. Okay, we got the rear one lined up, so get the bolt started in just a little bit. That'll help hold that one in position. All right, try to get that one to line up now. So I'm working against here. I'm gonna get a pry bar and put it in here and see if I can make that work. There we go. Check that out. Whew. Now, again, get these just snug is all I'm going to do for now. All right, both lower control arms installed and in place for the ADV. Let's talk springs. Springs are my least favorite part of the job, but a necessary evil to get this car back on the road. I have created my own spring compressor. This is made out of like a 320 Caterpillar excavator track plate, so it's super heavy duty steel. It's not going anywhere. Now, not everybody has those, so I recommend getting a spring compressor from the parts store, buying one, renting one, whatever. Because a spring has a lot of energy. It's not something you want to mess around with. And if anything, if someone's got some experience, how to put these things in. I don't like showing a whole lot on springs because there's just so much that can go wrong that this is one of the things I guess I'm going to say. This does cause me a little stress. I do not like this part of the job. So do what you want with that information. But either way, how it's all going to go down, we got to get him in here to get this car back together. Now, if you look here on the frame, there's a little hole drilled here, and you can see a step in the frame. Well, that's going to line up with this part of the spring here. So when you put it in, you got to get that clocked right. Now, it's also got a similar pocket in the control arm. Now, it's not as pronounced, but it's still here. It comes up about here. Now, I don't very often find the springs that line up here also line up there. So I've always just seemed to line it up here on the subframe, and wherever it lines in the control arm seems to work out okay. Like I said, it'd be clocked over here, but I think iSpring lands right about here if I clock it matching the top. So either way you look at it, as long as you either match the bottoms or match the tops on your car, you're probably going to be okay. But just throwing him in there, you may get it turned wrong, and you're going to cause a problem with the ride height and getting that spring in there. So that's about the thing I'm going to give you guys for a tip. Other than that, I'm going to wrestle the spring in, get it clocked, squeeze the spring so delicately with my ball thread, and then I'll put the spindle back on the car. All right, first step, since I'm using the all thread, I need you to install the separate control arm, because by the time the all thread's in place, it won't clear. So that just lines up on those threads. Simple as that. Now, get your spring into place, making sure we line up our little spot there on that part. And I can see that little hole to the top here. There it is. And now we just get an all thread, shove it through our plate, put our plate on the bottom, start the nut, and let the fun begin. Close up here. What we're going to do is, like I said, compress the spring up into the frame pocket. Then I can swing the control arm up and then install our spindle to hold it all into place. Now, if you look down in here's what I'm talking about. If I get the camera to focus and you can see it, but there's a little hole right there in front of my finger. You can actually see the spring poking through right there. So that's going to be lined up good. So I'm going to go ahead and now start the long job because I don't have the right wrench here at home. 15, 16 sockets what I need are super deep well. So I'm going to do the slow wrench thing here, about 1/8 inch turn at a time until I finally get that spring compressed enough to get that to swing up into place. All right, I rolled the jack underneath here as you can see it. It's not really supporting the weight because if I start lifting this thing up, there's no weight on that subframe. It just picks it right off the jack stand. So the only thing I'm really using that for is another hand to hold that control arm in place while I wrestle the spindle on. We go to put the spindle on, we can drop that on the lower ball joint here. And then you'll see now I should have enough length I can actually start the nut on both of those, torque those down, and I can take my spring pressure out of the way. Both the nuts are in place. I don't install the cotter pins until I'm all done. As part of the final assembly, I torque down all the control arm nuts and bolts and everything. Then I install the cotter pins because there's a chance maybe I got to take this thing back apart. Springs are a thing that I haven't quite figured out 100% which ones to get. Ride heights is kind of critical to me, so there may be a slim chance I'm taking this back apart. So for the meantime, though, this will get me together enough to assemble it to find out my ride height. So now the slow, tedious process of backing this off with a crescent wrench, because I don't have a 15/16 wrench at home. But anyway, I'll keep on doing this. I'll get this compressor thing out of the way, move on to the next. I just had to take a step back and check out what we've gotten done. Tell me this doesn't look a whole lot better than what we started with. Look at those nice new lines all laid into place, tied in down, looking super nice. Contrasting bolts and hardware, similar to the factory, but a little bit of a custom touch, but you can definitely tell it's been taken apart in all new components. Got the spindles in place, put the springs on without taking my head off. Added bonus there, right? Those things just make me nervous. But what we're going to work on next is, as you can tell, our parts pile is not near what it was to start with. I'm going to hang a couple calipers on the front, put the rotors on. I feel that's kind of self-explanatory. And look at the discoloration of that poor rotor. The pedal free height wasn't quite adjusted right between the push rod and the master cylinder. I'll show you guys how to dial that in so we prevent something like that. But we're going to try to run these rotors because they're new. I hope they're not a problem. If not, we'll change them out later. But at least in the meantime, get them back on, make this subframe mobile. But something else when it comes to brakes, maybe you didn't know about, these brake pads. Super common setup used on many cars for many years, but they shouldn't be loose in the caliper. They should be secured tight. This spring does a pretty good job of holding it on the piston side, but this outside pad really should not be loose when you put it in there. It should stay locked into place. As you can tell, this thing just flops around. That's seated all the way, but wiggles. Now, how you take care of that's pretty simple. See this tab here and here? Tap that with a hammer and bend it down until you actually have some tension when this actually kind of snaps into place. So I'm going to do that. That's something I just wanted to share with you when doing these. That helps prevent. If the brake pad can wiggle, one, of course, it rattles, which is obnoxious as heck. And then two, if it allows it to move, that's where you get your squeaks from. So I don't like squeaky brakes either. So we're going to twist on that a little bit and make that more gooder. And I'll get the calipers hung on this, but I'll just go ahead and knock that out here right quick. I decided to go ahead and show you what I was talking about. This is the loose pad in question. See, it moves up and down, and that's our problem. And here's our brake adjustment tool, hammer. Couple just taps here on these two corners. So we're bending this tab down where it actually grabs the caliper tighter. And I don't wiggle, but it should snap into place. So a couple more taps here. Now look at that. I can turn that caliper upside down. That's what you're looking for. Easy as that. Now go ahead and get that installed. Well, since we're talking about the brakes, and I didn't get a brake system on this, the brake line kit I ordered is for a car that's been converted from drum to disc. And why that is important is the brake lines are not the same, and these brackets are not the same from the factory. A disc brake car uses different brackets. It actually uses these holes here, it's bent different, operates different. Drum brake, it actually works kind of like this. It goes on the side here to the frame, but you'll see this brake line now is bent to meet up with the drum brake bracket. So these are definitely different brake lines. So something to keep in mind when ordering your brake line kit. If doing something like this, you might ask the manufacturer a question, or sometimes it's listed as with brass combination valve. That means you've gone from drum to disc. Now on the driver's side, one more thing to share. This bracket attaches to the frame right here. Put it in here, put it in place. You see what it actually covers up? It goes right over top of the bolt. That secures our power steering gearbox. So if you've got the gearbox off, either stab that bolt through or go ahead and install the gearbox first before putting this bracket on. Not the end of the world to take it back off, but less time flexing and moving brake lines around, the better off you are. So something else I want to share with you. Put your bolt in or install the pump or gearbox first and then put this bracket on. Now steering linkage I feel is kind of self-explanatory for the most part. I've already installed the idler arm, 2 bolts, nuts, torque that down. Center link, 69 Firebird only. Again, I'm going to say that it is not the same for Camaro or 67 and 68 Firebird. The short end, see how this between the hole and the ball socket here for the pitman arm, pretty short. This side, a lot longer. So the longer side is passenger side, short side is driver side. Now the tie rod ends, you have inner and outer. The goofy bent one is the inner one, the outer is a short one. You have a left-hand thread, right-hand thread on the actual adjustment sleeve, so of course, clock that right. But the other thing I wanted to stress is when you install these, you're going to start this thing on. So if you turn it on 3 turns, then turn that on 3 turns, then adjust the sleeve to keep the spacing equal. You don't want to turn this in like 10 turns, this only in 2 turns. You start doing the alignment, that end may pop out. So just keep those equal when you go to install it. So I'll go ahead and get that done, throw those on there. All installed. I keep mentioning this Centerlink 69 Firebird only, but I forgot the most important part. 69 Firebird V8 only. 6-cylinder is basically the same as your 67, 68 Firebird and the Camaro steering linkage. So I don't know how I forgot that, but hey, I can't remember everything every time. But nonetheless, our pile of parts is gone. That's all engine components. That's going to be our next go around. We'll start putting the 400 together. And look at that mountain of crap. Still a huge pile, but I need to sort through that and get through it and start working on getting those pieces cleaned up to get them ready to put back here on the subframe. But everything's all dialed in, looking pretty. Got the fuel line clips in. Still need to solve this mystery. My Turbo 400 cross member pull hole lines up, doesn't even come close. So I've got something wrong. This car was configured with a 350. I have that cross member, but this came with the car. It's supposedly the right one, but I'm thinking we need to do a little more homework on that. But went ahead and put the shift linkage there installed. That makes your steering column lockout work. So got that all put back on, power steering, gearbox. So our subframe is assembled enough now to go ahead and put our transmission and engine on that for our final fit. So there we go. One major obstacle complete. Complete subframe, detailed out, looking super sharp. Took care of little odds and ends. Got a few little chips to take care of, but I guess that's to be expected. Trying to beat some springs in there, get some control arms to fit. I guess you say it's a necessary evil sometimes, but a little paintbrush touched up. No big deal whatsoever. I got the transmission engine. Go start working on putting those together. You guys see the car I got this transmission out of. It's a real beaut. 1969 GTO. It'll be coming up one of the next videos here. And it's even going to be for sale if you guys want it. But you might wait to see how bad it is before you make any offers. But I bought it to use it for parts for a Judge and this car here. So I've got those videos coming. We've got to work on the underbody, get the fuel tank, fuel lines, brake lines, few little odds and ends taken care of. Then we still got to paint the firewall. But that's all part of the method of the madness. So I slipped up on the side. I use my garage space here, get the drivetrain assembled, and then pick a day, roll this thing all assembled to this side of the garage, finish the body working and everything on the firewall, paint it. When I was already laying back down, then we scoot this thing right underneath it. So that's all kind of how the process of working this thing here in a little tiny workspace. And speaking of all that, it's getting warm out. It's getting nice. Show car season's back in effect, you should say, right? I have no idea what shows I'm going to go to. You guys let me know in the comments. I may just skip out on the Trans Am Nationals. I don't think I'm going to mess with Firebird Fest, but I'm thinking about doing something a little different. I haven't decided which ones yet, so if you guys have any recommendations, really fantastic Pontiac shows, I like the Pontiac ones, but I guess I'm not just stuck on that. But some really cool show that appreciates some of the stuff that we're building here, particularly the Trans Am Ride. I've got it ready to go. I'll bring it to the show. You guys let me know when, where, why, what, and how. And I'll see if I can't make that happen. I'm kind of in the Midwest Indianapolis area, so I don't want to drive more than 200 miles probably. But hey, if it's really awesome, let me know. Nonetheless, got plenty more footage coming your way. A lot more projects happening. This definitely feels great to get this part of the project done. I hope this helps you out in putting this stuff together, making it happen. That's why I'm doing this, sharing the knowledge, sharing the experience, and maybe keeping you motivated on your project. So anyway, nonetheless, got a bunch more happening. I will grab the camera, and I hope to see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.